What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the December 2nd, 2023 edition of the SmackDown LowDown. Megan Morant, Matt Camp in the studio hosting per usual, recapping a pretty good edition of SmackDown, I thought, from Friday night, which I broke down in full audio form here on the channel yesterday. Check it out when you get a chance. They opened up the episode running down the biggest headlines from the show, including recapping the Butch loss to Bobby Lashley. We hear from Pretty Deadly afterward backstage here, because Pretty Deadly were obviously not involved in the match, but they did rough up Butch following the match backstage on that same show. They say here that they broke up the Brutes. They're responsible for breaking up the Brawling Brutes because Ridge Holland walked off on Butch during their tag team match with the Brawling Brutes a few weeks ago. And they mentioned that, Butch has it hard and people are walking out on him and he's fighting the fight alone, blah, blah, blah. And then I forgot the name of I honestly forget the Pretty Deadly names of each individual member. But whoever was injured had mentioned, well, I had an injury and I had no sympathy and I don't feel bad for Butch at all, blah, blah, blah. And they basically just say they're coming after all the tag teams and they're going to make life hard for everyone. And I think they call themselves like the arthritis of the tag team division because they're coming for old people or something like that. I thought they said all people, but it would make more sense if they said old people. Not because, Butch is old, but because their, arthritis typically affects older people. Anyway, so moving on. We hear from Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Bobby Lashley kind of praises the depth of the SmackDown roster right now because Butch went after Bobby Lashley looking for a fight. And Bobby says that, listen, he came after me. He wanted to fight. I gave him that fight. He's got guts, and he made a name for himself out there, which I wouldn't really argue based off that performance. They had a good match. I wouldn't really say Butch looked so great in defeat that he made a name for himself for that one match if he didn't have a name already, which was the case I made last week. But anyway, the Street Profits praised Bobby Lashley, and that was really about it. So kind of a nothing interview from Bobby and the Profits, which kind of further drove home, watching this interview specifically, nothing else from the last couple of months, that Bobby Lashley is a babyface. The Profits are very likable as well. But Bobby Lashley, for as great of a heel as he is, just doesn't play that role well because he's always catering to the audience, and people just naturally, organically like Bobby Lashley. So it's just not the right fit for him right now, it seems. But back in the studio, they hype up Bobby Lashley versus Karrion Kross in the first round of the United States Championship #1 Contenders Tournament kicking off on that same show. They also recap the Santos Escobar win over Joaquin Wilde from SmackDown before previewing Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar in a rematch from a Survivor Series next week on SmackDown, with the winner advancing in the aforementioned United States Championship Tournament. Speaking of which, they replay the Logan Paul, Kevin Owens segment from SmackDown announcing said tournament, and also recap Kevin Owens' win over Grayson Waller from SmackDown before previewing said tournament, talking about the NXT Factor, who is the mystery NXT name, having former United States champions in there, and both Matt Camp and Megan Morant call Karrion Kross the Dark Horse, which is funny because he's probably getting bumped first in that match with Bobby Lashley. I can't see a scenario where Karrion Kross beats Bobby Lashley, who they're not aggressively pushing right now, but Bobby is just so over, and I like Karrion Kross a lot, but I just don't see that working out well for Karrion Kross. They replay the opening segment, setting up the Bianca-Kairi Sane match for later on in the show. They recap that matchup. We hear from Charlotte Flair backstage, and she says that she has respect for Asuka ahead of their match next week on SmackDown, but she has her number, as she always has. Iron sharpens iron, blah, blah, blah. Nothing really new here from Charlotte. She just mentions that she's ready for the matchup, and it's going to be same as always, with her coming out on top. Charlotte, she comes across as natural most of the time in her interviews. Not in her promos, but her interviews. And I say promo because she's not a great promo person either, but she's also just not a great interview. Like, I've always enjoyed interviewing her personally, but like even in these backstage WWE interviews, it seems like she's always searching for what to say, and she says, I don't know a lot, and stuff like that. And that was kind of the case here. She's like, I don't know. It's probably going to be the same as always with me beating her once again. Like, it wasn't really anything new or insightful. She was just like, what do I even say to this question? Maybe it's just an indictment on the dumb questions these interviewers have to ask because it's WWE and it's a fake sport, blah, blah, blah. But I thought that was interesting. So anyway, to close out the show, they recap the closing segment from SmackDown with Randy Orton signing with the Blue Brand, officially a member of SmackDown going forward. Matt Camp says that we saw a different side of Randy Orton this week, which we did, a great side of Randy Orton. Now he's calling Friday nights home once again, and they plug CM Punk making his first SmackDown appearance in nearly 10 years on next week's episode. Pretty basic stuff here, hearing from Bobby and the Prophets and Charlotte, and pretty deadly. Pretty average mic work from all involved here on this episode. The show's never really worth seeking out. This episode in particular, not a lot of insight or analysis or even great interviews from those that they did feature on the show. The episode went up a lot later this week than usual for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. It went up on Peacock a lot later on in the day on Saturday. So hopefully that's not the new norm going forward, because this would have been up yesterday if I was able to watch it and review it sooner. But anyway, a pretty basic ho-hum edition here of the SmackDown Lowdown. Thank you guys as always for checking out my reviews. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.